What's good, YouTube? Your boy 21 here, bringing you part 2 of how to build a Yu-Gi-Oh deck. This portion is basically the spell card portion. If you guys watched the last video was basically talking about monsters and the monster ratios and my opinion. And I basically gave my analysis on how you should adjust your monster ratios depending on what kind of deck you're running. Either be control, aggro, or somewhere in between. For the spell card portion, spell cards are pretty much the heart of the deck. They help you win your game. Unless you're playing something like Monster Mash, but deck is neither here or there because it can either flop on you in a second or it can just either wreck your opponent's face. But that's another topic for another day. So, how to build a Yu-Gi-Oh deck part 2 with spell cards. Spell cards, in my opinion, like I said, are harder to deck. And we only currently right now have 2 staple spell cards that, in my opinion, every deck should run, and the maximum number that can run it in. The first staple spell card being Mystical Space Typhoon. The second staple spell card being Dark Hole. Now, a lot of players, even a lot of pro players, would disagree with me on Dark Hole, based on the fact that a lot of people cut it from their main deck due to the fact that their monsters can pretty much handle everything that Dark Hole does and more, and they rather run something like Mirror Force, Compose, or etc. In my opinion, Dark Hole should be ran in everything. Reason being, Dark Hole just covers the field, the bases on every deck and every format. You see the wind-up format, Dark Hole cleared in sector field. It can clear in a wind-up field. While it couldn't be touched by Terrorists, it cleared up everything. You see the 2013 Dragon format. I find a lot of people really stopped cutting. They started cutting Dark Hole due to the fact that first turn Draco was a thing. But in my opinion, that was still terrible because you can Dark Hole the Draco tokens and run the Draco, which is how I was beating a lot of Dragon players last format. And you jump it up to now, Dark Hole is still pretty good. I mean, granted, a lot of Bujin players go Hail first turn, but I've also seen some Bujin players still go Turtle first turn. So when they send a Turtle, you can Dark Hole the Yamato out of the way. Against artifacts, if they make play these turn 1, Dark Hole. Same thing against any other deck. It's just board wipe for us veteran players who played during the Raigeki, when Raigeki was a thing. We know the power of field destruction. Now, there are exceptions to the rule if you're playing against something like Fire Kings, but the meta hasn't been Fire Kings, and the meta will never be Fire Kings. And even if Fire Kings were the meta, there are instances where you can Dark Hole the Big Bird out of the way and tie for game. So, also, Dark Hole covers against the lower tier decks. Things like people who still want to play Insectors and etc. So, it's basically one of those cards that can help you out against a wide variety of matchups, and I don't understand why people take out the decks. But that's enough ranting on that. That's a whole nother video topic that I probably will be discussing on probably later on to this tonight. So, staple spell cards, MST and Dark Hole. You run MST in your 3, you run under 1 Dark Hole. There's a reason why it's at 1. As for spell cards in general, there are 6 types of spell cards. The first type being the obvious normal spell card, the second type being quick play, third type being field spell, fourth type being equip spell tail, then you have your continuous spell card and your ritual spell card. Normal spell cards are usually your draw power spells, and they're usually your searching spells. You do have your normal spells like Dark Hole, which are destruction based, and Smashing Run, which are destruction based, but the average Yu-Gi-Oh deck shouldn't be running no type of destruction spell unless it's Dark Hole, which is why it's a staple. But when you're going towards your consistency route, you're going to want to have some type of consistency draw power to your deck to make it function better. Which is the reason why a lot of players, when they build standard aggro decks or standard decks in general nowadays, they add in their 3 Upstart Goblins, because 3 Upstart Goblins means your deck count goes from 40 to 37, allowing your deck to flow a little smoother. And for the players who don't run Upstart Goblin, for players who run their normal spells that helps them shift through a deck that requires, let's say, discard fodder. Examples of that will be trade-in. They run their trade-ins on different ratios. In my opinion, when you run things on different ratio, when you go into the ratio route for stuff like trade-ins and what's another one? That hero spell card, that Destiny Draw. You want to go for the 2-to-3 ratio, the 3-to-1 ratio. What I mean by 3-to-1 ratio is for every 3 level 8s for a trade-in, or for every 3 heroes for a Destiny Draw, you run exactly 1 trade-in or 1 Destiny Draw. If that makes sense to you guys. So that way your deck can flow better, and for like every hand you draw like maybe 2-to-3 level 8s, you're gonna at least have that 1 trade-in, hopefully. So that way you can benefit. Same thing goes for Destiny Draw. When you're running decks, if you're just trying to add draw power to your deck and you already have your trade-in, or you already have your Destiny, not your Destiny Draw, but you already have your Upstart in, and you want to add some more, or your deck that you don't want to run Upstart because you feel like you want to give your opponent that life points, but you still want the deck to have some draw power. We do have limited. The game does have limited draw cards. Pot of Avarice used to be one of them, but it got banned due to the fact that decks like Mermail shifted 2 cards so fast, so targeting 5 cards in their graveyard were easy to get out of. Now we have cards like Pot of Dictominy, which is not a powerful, but it pretty much does the same thing, but it minuses out your draw phase. We run a card like Pot of Dictominy that has limited restrictions to the drawing. You want to run it at 2-to-3, depending on how fast you can shift to your deck and how you see yourself going through the flow of the game consistently over and over and over. And that's something you only learn through testing. Testing plays a major role in building your deck. Your first model of your deck is never the final model. You got to go through phase 1, phase 2, and for me, 3 is the lucky number. So some of you guys, 2 might be lucky number. Hell, I even seen players build a deck in just top events with it. It happens, but even after they top the event, they know it was there and they improve the deck for the next event. As far as your normal spells, as far as the tutoring is concerned with the normal spells, tutoring cards usually should be ran in 3s, depending on how restricted they are. If they have limited restrictions, cards like, let's say for example, Rhoda, back in 2004, it had, when everyone was running a lot of warriors in their deck, had like 4 to 5 targets for the 1 spell card to search it out in your deck. You want to hit it at 3s. If your card is restricted, like let's say Tenki, and you're playing Boojins, you probably want to run it at a 2 of, because you're only really realistically getting your motto. Same thing for Glabby's players that run Tenki. You're going to run it at 2 of it as well. So if you're running a tutor card that you're trying to add consistency to your deck with, you should always start it off with a 2 of, just to see how it flows through your deck. And if you think it flows really well, you want to bump it up to 3. And if you think it flows a little too much and you're drawing it too much, and you find yourself setting it as a bluff, just cut it back down to 2. That way, you know, okay, the 2 of isn't working, the 3 of is too much, so yeah, 2 of is the right number. As far as continuous spells go, a lot of decks really don't run continuous spells, because continuous spells aren't that good right now. Continuous spells are only really run back in 2012, really, and during the wind-up format with Wind Up Factory, which was a 3 of, and arguably one of the best continuous spell cards in the game. And you can also probably go back to 2008 or 9, I believe, when Black Whirlwinds were a thing and everyone was running 3 Black Whirlwinds. And the reason why they ran 3, because those cards tutored out cards. So they were a continuous spell that basically had the tutoring effect, and it tutored multiple copies. So in instances like that, you're gonna want to run a 3 of. But then right now in this 2014 format, we have the continuous spells like Madote Ticket, which does search out cards through the deck, but it's very restricted. And when cards are very restricted, you run 1 or 2 copies of it, depending on how fast your deck is. And once again, you see that only through testing. So, moving on to equip spells for your deck. The standard deck nowadays really don't run equip spells unless it has a legitimate reason or OTK combo. The only deck that does really run equip spells right now is Noble Knights. and that deck is pretty much combo based. Get your guy out, equip all your spell cards to him, and that's pretty much game over. If you're gonna run equip spells, I suggest trying running United We Stand or Mage Power, because those spell cards give your monsters a big boost, which can help you beat over big monsters. But once again, that they aren't really that necessary due to the fact of what we have cards like Dimensional Prison, Sakura-Escent Armor, even Mirror Force to work with nowadays. As far as quick play spells, they can be either defensive, combo based, or offensive. Combo based ones are usually runs like Chain Summoning. You run 2 to 3 of those depending on your deck's consistency once again. And your defensive spell cards, you started off at the 2 to 3 ratio because you want to see, okay, how often monsters lasting on the field against this format, how flexible is the card. Cards like Forbidden Lands are a good example of good quick play flexible cards that can help you out of a lot of situations, which a lot of players do run 3 of in a deck. They cut out the 1 MST. Me personally, I run 2 lances because I run a lot of trap cards, and I feel like 2 lances are just, I mainly use them for their second effect, which helps against the spell and trap protection. So, as a closing statement, spell cards are, as I said in the beginning of the video, the heart of your deck. The ratio of the spell card really pretty much depends on your play testing. And MST and Dark Hole are mainly the only staples you have to worry about. And everything else is going to be restricted on how often you open up your hands, how often are you shifting through your deck when your monsters are searching, and based on your knowledge from your first few rounds of play testing and how your monster lineup is set up, you transition it into your spell cards to add more consistency to your deck. This is yugioh21 with How to Build a Yu-Gi-Oh deck Part 2, the spell portion. If you guys liked the video, give it a thumbs up, rate, comment, subscribe, and I'm out. Deuces. The next portion, the trap portion, will be up later on this week. Have a good day.